I literally randomly opened this Bible right here, right before I hopped on behind the scenes to start this show. And this is the page that I landed on. It's Ezekiel chapter 18, starting at verse 5. If a man is righteous and does what is lawful and right, if he does not eat upon the mountains or lift up his eyes to the idols of the house of Israel, does not defile his neighbor's wife, or approach a woman during her menstrual period, does not oppress anyone, but restores to the debtor his pledge, commits no robbery, gives his bread to the hungry, and covers the naked with a garment, does not take advance or accrued interest, withholds his hand from iniquity, executes true justice between contending parties, follows my statutes, and is careful to observe my ordinances, acting faithfully. Such a one is righteous. Now, there's a lot there that we could talk about, right? I mean, the not approaching a woman during her menstrual period, right? The no accrued interest, or for some reason not eating on mountains. But what I want to focus on right now is this. The biggest aspect of that list of how a righteous man acts is according, in large part, to how he treats others around him. Not oppressing people, paying his debts, not robbing those in his community, feeding the hungry, and clothing the naked. A general sense of lifting up one's community, not for fame or riches, but goodness for goodness sake. So let me ask the Christians out there real quick. Do you think your behaviors and actions line up with this? What about those with big platforms who claim the name of Jesus? Do their behaviors line up with this? Now, I think there's quite a lot of people out there who don't. And I don't see a lot of Christians doing anything about it. Normally, I'm on here and I'm telling you that the Bible is wrong or that it's silly or whatever. But today, I'm going to take the biblical stance and I'm calling out you Christians. Are you actually following your Bible? Because I don't think so. Maybe I'm completely off base and you can embarrass me about my misunderstanding of biblical knowledge. All you got to do is call, because the show's starting right now. Hey, everybody. Today is May 25th, 2025. I'm your host, Secular Rarity, and joining me today is the one and only, the man himself, Scott Dickie. What's up, bro?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's my pleasure to be on with the ineffable Secular Rarity. Ineffable. Did I say no? Beautiful. I didn't say that right.
I think so. I'm pretty sure that's right. That is the third nicest thing somebody has said to me this week.
All right. Yeah. Well, my goal was to be in the top 5, so I overshot a little bit. So
that's okay.
So he's mostly not effable. Little effable.
Little effable. A little bit of affability in there. Yeah, that's good.
Exactly.
That's good. How are we spelling affability right there? Is that just like F apostrophe? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Could go either. It could mean something very different. Very different. Yeah.
So I got in trouble the last time I was on an ACA show, just very recently. Not this most recent episode of Truth Wanted, but the week before that, I got in trouble. So I am going to try my best to be very good and not cross too many lines. But we will see. And by the way, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there. You know, if you send in super chats, we might have to push those limits a little. I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm throwing it out there. And if you want all the dirt on what I did to get yelled at by the crew, you just got to go watch those episodes. They're out there.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing story. Amazing story.
It's a lot of fun. I cried a lot afterwards. But the scars won't stay forever. Anyway, so as not to get in complete trouble, I'm going to tell you that the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. All very cool things, in my opinion, things that everybody should be proud to support. If you are a lover of people and democracy and other good things. I was going to list some more things, but then I was like, no, I probably can't say all of those. I don't want to get in trouble. Anyway, we do have calls, and we got some wonderful people already on the lines, but we need some more. We want you to call in. So for just a moment, I wanna talk with you, Scott. I want to see what you think on this thought here that I've laid out. That, you know, there's a lot of places in the Bible that says a lot of really stupid stuff, in my opinion, a lot of bad and gross stuff. But there's some stuff like that too. Right. And it seems to me that there are many believers out there that claim that they know the Bible, that they follow the Bible, and that every part of it is God's inerrant word. So I guess what I'm wondering is, how do we square that when we see all these actions that are counter to that?
Yeah, I don't know if it's squareable. I mean, I think they're clearly, I mean, if we're setting this up as like a reductio ad absurdum, there's definitely some conflict going there. So it means one of those assumptions that you were just talking about has to be wrong. Either they don't believe what they're talking about, either they don't know what they're talking about, or whatever the third one was. What was the third one?
It's not inerrant.
Yeah, right.
It's
that. Or that. Yeah. So, I mean, something's got to give there. Or logic, I suppose. Logic goes out the window. I guess that could be the fourth option.
Yeah, that is
possible.
But
it just doesn't, as far as squaring it, it's that's just an exercise in futility, I think, and frustration on the part of many people who actually try to do that. I've seen religious people try to reconcile that, and I've seen non-religious people point it out that that it's not being reconciled. And so what I would love to see is and this would lend a lot to the thought that that the religious belief or the religious perspective is correct, is if they would start calling each other out. That's what I would love to see. I would love to see biblical literalists calling out the people who are not following through with what they're saying they believe in. I mean, it's one thing for us to point that out, but it's something different for somebody who also is a believer to point that out as well.
See, I think so too, and I think this is a valuable space for us in the atheist, non-religious, secular humanist. All of those different kinds of stripes. We're all kind of going in the same direction, and I think we need to align ourselves more with those believers that are willing to behave and engage in society a lot more the way Ezekiel is describing here, right? Now, again, obviously there's some weird stuff in there that we gotta,
yeah.
But I think if the believing Christian, right, is going to be engaging with like 90% of those things in that list, they're probably innately going to be one of those people that's like, hey, I'm not down with this whole like just like baked in misogyny stuff,
Right.
I'm not the whole like women on their period putting them in a tent stuff. That's nonsensical, That's I see that shaking out like that. So I think those people are on our team. I think those people are on our side right now, and we need more Christians standing up and saying what happened to the verse about rendering unto Caesar what is Caesar's. I mean, that's separation of religion and government, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, hell yeah, read your damn Bible and follow it.
Right.
I think that is something that we haven't done a fantastic job of in the past. But here's the good news, right? Because this is a call-in show, I'm sure there are some atheists out there that are like, wow, SR, you're a dipshit. And I think we're far enough into the show that I can cuss now. So if you think I'm a dipshit,
were you trying to behave today? I mean, you're already going off the rails here. So
I'm trying to, but I have no idea whether or not I'm going to make it happen. Before we grab this call, because we've got Hannah, we are going to come to you. We're gonna hear about materialism and physicalism, but I'm just going to say, hey guys, look. take 5 seconds and like the video real quick, because I want to be able, after this video, when the crew is upset with me and they're yelling at me and they're like saying like, seriously, man, we might not invite you back. Like, this isn't a joke. Please stop laughing at us. Like, you have made so much more work for us. It's always a hassle. Like, I want to at least be able to point to this video and be like, yeah, but look at all the likes we got, you know, like, come on, all these people send it. So like, do that for me, you know, don't do it for
what you're asking for. Save SR.
Right. That's right. We saved Ferris, and now we need to save SR.
Right, exactly.
So like the video, subscribe to the channel, get those notification on, and comment below and say things like save SR, or don't yell at him too much, or oh my God, why do you keep bringing him back? Any of those are acceptable, honestly. But we have a bunch of really good calls and a bunch of other cool things to mention too. But we're going to go to the calls first, and we are going to go out to Mississippi. We are talking with Hannah. She, her pronouns, is a theist. And you want to talk about materialism and physicalism. Well, I'm all for it, Hannah. You are on the Atheist Experience, and what you got for us?
So basically, I would like to argue against materialism and physicalism. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but my understanding is that you two hold to the position of materialism and physicalism metaphysically. So correct me if that's mistaken.
I would say materialism, probably. Yeah, methodological materialism for sure. I'm not in the boat of saying that like, just we know for sure that there's nothing out there that's non-material, but it does seem to be the best way to operate so far. Physicalism and materialism are a little bit different, and I would not necessarily call myself a physicalist, but we don't need to go through all those nuances, because I think we can probably have a good discussion with that. But does that help, Hannah?
That makes sense. I was just curious if you did subscribe. But of course, when I asked whether you subscribe to it, I'm not asking if you believe it's 100% like certain. Yeah. It's just like if you generally.
Right, but that's an important distinction to make, though, before we continue the conversation. And I'm kind of in the same boat as SR. You know, I prefer to call myself a practical materialist. Right, as a matter of practice, we can identify material things and have not, to my knowledge, been able to identify or justify belief in the non-material in the way that I think you're suggesting. And so I think it's pretty much the same as what SR was saying.
Okay, so the first line of criticism that I believe makes materialism, even methodological materialism, untenable is what David Chalmers calls the hard problem of consciousness. So are you familiar with the distinction he makes between the hard problem and soft problem of consciousness?
I think so, but if you'd like to give us a quick wrap, I mean, that'd be great for all our viewers.
Yeah, so basically the quick wrap, as I understand his position, and I think it makes sense, is that there's a difference between, you can say, the soft problem of consciousness, which is basically certain like functional interactions between the brain, and what he calls the hard problem of consciousness, which is the essential difference between what's considered, qualia, which is essentially the experience or subjectivity of experience, versus a physical object. Like there's something about the experience of redness that is not reducible to, say, looking at like a piece of like a physical molecule or like a quark or a lepton, right? So there's basically a difference between intentionality and aboutness of consciousness. And so I would argue that means that materialism, which as I understand denies the existence of consciousness as an immaterial thing, untenable.
As a material, yeah. Okay, so my question would be, why?
Well, because if consciousness doesn't exist, then I don't believe you can account for the aboutness of consciousness in qualia.
Cool. I'm glad that you don't believe that. My question is, though, how is that something that undermines materialism. What it sounds to me like you're saying, and please just correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like what you're saying is that this system, materialism, seemingly has this little hole in it, and therefore all of it is BS. And that may be the case very much, right? But you just have to make that connection. Just because materialism currently does not explain to the full degree what consciousness is, does not mean that the entire system is flawed. It may, but you just got to demonstrate that for us. So how does that undermine all of materialism because we don't have an answer for what consciousness is right now? And I think we do have good answers, by the way, but I'm willing to grant the hard problem of consciousness. I've heard some cool people talking, some people even talking with Mr. Chalmers himself, that the hard problem of consciousness isn't actually real. But we don't have to even go that route today. So what about the hard problem of consciousness not being solved undermines all of materialism?
Well, because if materialism posits there's no such thing as consciousness.
What I wouldn't say that it does that. So hang on. I think there's an assumption that you're not bringing to the forefront, and it's okay because we all do this, right? But I think you're assuming to begin with that consciousness is immaterial. And that's the problem. If you're already starting with the presupposition that consciousness is immaterial, then clearly there would be a problem with it. That would be the way that it undermines. That's the connection, right? So what you would say is you'd say, hey, SR, we know that consciousness is immaterial. And because materialism does not have the ability to account for immaterial things, and we know consciousness is a thing and it's immaterial, boom, materialism falsified. But the problem is that you then have to take the stance that consciousness is immaterial.
Let me add something into that too, Hannah, before you respond to that. Would you say, if we set aside the question of consciousness for a second, if instead I asked you something along the lines of, do you think that the existence of running, do you think that would disprove materialism? Because running, I think we can agree, is not a material thing, although it is an activity or a characteristic, or however you want to describe it, of material. The idea of, you move your legs in a certain way for a certain amount of time for a certain speed, that's running. Okay. And so would you say that the existence of running discredits materialism in that same way as you're talking about consciousness?
Well, so that's where I believe that question would depend on what type of materialism we're talking about. I would believe if materialism, as defined as a non-physicalist materialism, running would disprove, not like reductive materialism, I should say, because running involves energy, which is not the same as matter. To my understanding, many physicists would say energy and matter are distinct properties, and so I would say yes, running would disqualify materialism, but not disqualify physicalism. But
I don't think there's any materialists here that will disagree with the existence of energy.
Yeah, and I would push back a little bit and just say that the relation of energy becoming matter and matter becoming energy, like we have a decent understanding of that shit happening, like explosions occur, right? So like some of that matter turns into sound, some of it turns into light. And so, I mean, but again, let's reframe a little bit and let's go back to consciousness. Do you take the stance that consciousness is immaterial? Because I think that's a really interesting thing for us to kind of pick at a little bit more.
Well, yes, and the reason is precisely the reasoning of the hard problem of consciousness, that if there's an essential difference between how the subjective experience of phenomena and something that can be quantified objectively in like a physical spatio-temporal sense, like say, like an atom, for example. You can see an atom directly, but you can't see consciousness.
Oh, I don't know if you cut out there for a second. You still with us, Hannah?
Cut out.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's good. I think no, you're good. I think I'm following along with you, but I want to know if you remember saying this. You said if, Hannah. Do you remember that?
Well,
when you started describing all of this, you said if consciousness is immaterial. And I'm with you, Hannah. If consciousness is shown to be immaterial, then a lot of these things you're talking about may actually prove to be true. But what if it isn't? And the big question is it currently proven to be such? And I think there is a growing consensus in many of the fields of expertise that would be able to understand and parse this data for us. I think there is a growing consensus that no, it is not immaterial, that it is a sliding scale, that life seems to have varying degrees of consciousness based on almost exclusively based on the physical makeup of a neural system. Now, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that makes great fucking sense. But I could be an idiot. I sure could be. But what do you think about that?
Well, so I would just say that I don't remember putting the qualifier if, although I did. I'm sure I did. If I did,
just rewatch. I could be wrong. I'll rewatch too. Yeah, I just rewatch. But yeah.
Okay. But yeah, if I said if, yeah, I think I may have misphrased my point. I think it's clear consciousness has to be immaterial, but the reason is because I don't believe you can look at qualia through a test tube. Like I don't see how you could falsify what it means to see brightness through a test.
And that's fair.
Like,
and I understand that, but real quick, I just want to say, like, it's not to say that you're wrong, Hannah. It's just to say that's not actually an argument against the thing I'm saying. Like, if somebody comes up to me and says, I have a bunny rabbit, and I go, yeah, I just can't see how anybody could own a bunny. They take so much effort. They poop everywhere. They're smelly. They have big fluffy ears. I just can't understand how you could do that. That isn't a response to them saying, I own a bunny rabbit. Just like me saying, hey, like, what if that isn't the case? You going, yeah, I just can't really see how you could do that. That doesn't actually give us reason to accept your claim.
Or did you misstate your response?
Well,
did you mean to say, I just don't see?
Sorry, what was that?
I apologize if I'm interrupting. Did you mean to say, because you started out that last little bit by saying, I don't see how. Was that a misstatement, or did you mean that part?
I meant that part, but the reason is because I think you'd need to be able to provide like an example of a falsifiable experiment, and I think falsifiability is an important criterion in science, a falsifiable experiment for how qualia emerges from physical processes such that it can be fully reduced to physical processes.
Did you catch the problem, Scott?
I caught a problem.
You think? Okay, I'm gonna let Scott go for a second, Hannah, because I caught something there too that I'd grab. But go ahead, Scott. I'll shut up.
It was very subtle. If you're not paying attention, you might miss it. Did you detect a shifting of the burden of proof there? Basically what you're saying is we need to provide a counterexample. Otherwise, you're going to accept that what you're saying is true. Is that what you meant to say, or are we?
That was what I caught. That was exactly what I caught, Scott.
All right.
Yeah.
That worries me that we're on the same vibe here, the same wavelength. But we'll press on.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think about that, Hannah?
So you correct me if I'm wrong. Did you just say that me asking for how consciousness would emerge in a falsifiable experiment is shifting the burden of proof?
No, what I was saying is that we were asking you why does that show that consciousness can't be, or why would it show that it has to be immaterial? And your response was, well, you have to ... Okay, and that, to me, that doesn't seem like a very above board way of showing your point. Your point shouldn't depend on what SR and Scott can or can't do or say.
Right. Just real quick, and I'll shut up, I swear. If what you're saying is demonstrably true, then the answer is to demonstrate it, not to say, hey guys, why don't you try and knock down my tower? If your tower can withstand the strongest of forces, all you have to do is grab a sledge and start hitting it. You don't need us to do anything. And in fact, asking us to do something games the system, right? This is the whole point with James Randi bringing in the magicians to fool the scientists. The scientists were under strict instructions never to let the magicians touch the machines. And every single one of them did not follow that. And the moment the magician touched the machine, they were able to manipulate it in a way that when the scientists turned back around to them and said, hey, why don't you show us that you can levitate things? The magician said, well, why don't you prove that I can't? That is not the way to truth.
Right.
I'll shut up now, Hannah. I know I shouted a lot, but I'm going to give you some time. So go ahead.
I believe that's a mistaken analogy in this case towards the consciousness being immaterial. And the reason is because, so as I understand materialism in a philosophical sense, so there's two distinctions here. You can make metaphysical materialism, which says everything is matter, and methodological materialism, which says everything, like, correct me if I'm mistaken, but as I understand, methodological materialism says everything which can be observed has to be appear in a material way to senses.
Incorrect.
So that's
Incorrect.
my understanding. Was that?
Yeah, I would say that is not the proper way to understand methodological materialism. Okay, so what I would say is a better, and I could absolutely be completely wrong on this, Hannah. Okay, please check me, double check me, triple check me, ask 1,000 other people, right? But the way that I think about it is more so in the sense of currently, all of the different camps out there that are attempting to move towards truth, we can agree on this one thing, and that is material stuff is here. We may not be sure how it got here. It may not be the only thing, but we don't get to bring in anything else until it can adhere to the same provability and falsifiability that we have with the one thing we are all standing on, agreeing upon, which is material stuff. Is that fair? Is that a fair understanding?
It might be. I haven't spoken to many. Most people who I hear call themselves materialists who I've heard identify as what you could consider ontological materialists. So they commit themselves to the idea that only matter is real. So I don't know too much about
I've heard a lot of ontological materialists too. Not saying they're not real, not saying they're not valid, none of that stuff. But let's just not worry about anybody else. Just you and me, Hannah. You say, SR, are you a materialist? And I go, well, kinda. I'm this methodological materialism, and this is what I mean by that. How do you feel about that? And do you think that's a fair way for us to navigate the world?
And I would also throw in that if you want to show that materialism is not the case, then you would need to be able to address multiple, all the different forms of materialism, including what SR was just describing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you finished?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I would respond to that is, first, I would disagree with the premise that everyone agrees that matter, exists. There are people, this is a pretty small minority of the population, but they do exist, who are complete idealists, right? In a metaphysical sense, for example, the philosopher and cognitive science Donald Hoffman says that physical matter is an illusion, that everything is observer dependent on consciousness.
I am not positive. I believe I have Donald Hoffman's book just in the other room, and I've only gotten through a decent portion of it. I don't think if you asked Donald Hoffman if he thinks matter is not real, I highly, highly doubt he would say, no, matter does not exist. I think he would couch that in a lot of deep explanation about what's going on with our rods and cones in our eyes and the wiring in our brains. But I think if you asked the man point blank, are coffee cups real? He's going to say, yeah. I don't think he disagrees that matter is real. I could be mistaken. I sure could be. But like I said, I've only gotten through half of that book, but I'm pretty sure he does agree that I do not think there is an idealist that says all matter is actually non-existent and it is just thoughts. I don't think that, but I could be wrong. So,
Well, okay. I thought he believed that matter is observer dependent. So I could be wrong. I'd have to look more. I haven't completed it.
Yeah. I love the humility from all sides, Hannah. I think that's always one thing. You know, if any of us are wrong and anybody can tell us, please call in, tell us, post comments, all that good stuff. But anywho, I'm sorry. We've gotten a little derailed, and that's partly my fault. But yeah, let's go forward with the understanding of methodological materialism that I presented, and let's talk about consciousness through that lens. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, so to respond to your point about what you described as what you consider to be methodological materialism, I would say the flaw in that, beyond the question of whether or not there are some people who deny the existence of matter, is that even if everyone accepted the existence of matter, I think you can also make a case for the inclusion of non-material ways of you could say knowing or understanding,
like what,
using various philosophical arguments. So
like
I would
what?
give then let me, because there's multiple things that I can say.
Just give one. Just start. Hang on, Hannah. Just start with one, and let's investigate that together for a second, and then we'll grab another one if we have time. But let's just start with one. What is one non-material way that you think materialists have to accept in terms of coming to knowledge or something?
Numbers. The existence of abstract numbers.
Okay, numbers are a description of the universe around us. So they do have a physical material component that is necessary for them to exist. If nothing exists in the world, if all material doesn't exist, we don't have numbers. Is that fair?
Well, that might be the
numbers
case,
just describe things.
That's not necessarily true. So could I just provide the argument for numbers being immaterial? And then,
Sure.
Okay. So I don't. So I haven't completed the paper myself, but I have read parts of it. But I was reading about what's considered the Quine-Putnam. It's called the indispensability argument for mathematics. But basically, in this, the logicians Willard Van Orman Quine and Hilary Putnam argue that when analyzing the laws of physics, non-material or non-physical abstract object of numbers have to be assumed methodologically because our best theories in physics rely on the existence of consistent mathematical formulas, which are not themselves reducible to independent physical observation.
I'm gonna let Scott take over. He's actually more trained in mathematics than myself, but I will just say, numbers are based on the laws of logic, and the laws of logic are a description of the physical universe around us. Numbers don't exist unless we have identity. Go ahead, Scott. Tell us about numbers and math.
Well, I would say that, what you're talking about there, can you repeat that last little bit?
What was that? So you broke up for a second?
I'm sorry. I asked you because I don't want to misquote you. Could you just say what you said about why numbers need to exist separately?
Right. What was the reasoning for the go through the Hilary Quine paper again? I'm sorry.
So as I understand the Putnam-Quine paper is that it said that when you're looking at our best models in physics, including to my understanding, quantum mechanics and obviously classical, I think Newtonian physics is in this too as well, that they rely on consistent mathematical formulas which have to be assumed when analyzing the laws of physics. So you can't look at a law of physics without assuming certain mathematical formulae about especially in geometry.
So if we notice a consistent relationship between two quantities, for example, the mass of an object on Earth and its weight on Earth, if we notice a consistent relationship between those two quantities, does that then imply that this relationship must exist as a thing? I mean, I'd question what you mean by exist there. I mean, if we, as SR has already said, and I would agree with him, that our concept of number is based off of description. It's based off, and therefore is in fact grounded on material. We can speak abstractly, but when we put the rubber to the road, it's a description of things in the universe. And when we talk about mathematical relationships, we talk about mathematical formulas, et cetera, theorems, and so on. We're talking about relationships between those quantities. And I don't think that, or are you saying that the idea that physical material can have relationships? Do you think that the existence of those relationships is that what you're calling as immaterial? Because to me, that's just a description of the material.
Right.
Well, I think my position's a little bit nuanced on this. I would say I'm agnostic as to whether or not how certain the existence of abstract entities like numbers are, but I do believe that abstract entities, numbers, should be assumed as immaterial because of the seeming uniformity of them throughout the physical universe. Because even if you can say they're ultimately derived from observation, that doesn't mean they're reducible to physical observation. So there's a difference between. I'm
sorry. I kind of cut it in there. No. I cut you off. If you still remember, finish your thought.
So yeah. So basically, I would just argue that you can say numbers are ultimately reducible to observation of the laws of physics, but because they prove so consistently throughout the laws of physics, you can't reduce them to an individual law. Like they have to be assumed as abstract, universal. I don't want to say a priori, but you can even argue a priori. But then we'd have to get into Kant and some other things, and that's like a whole.
Sure. Yeah. Anyway. And I'm gonna maybe take us down a route that is a bit of a tangent, but that I can fucking do that. So that's what I'm gonna do, Hannah. Let me ask something, because this might help us. I mean, it might not, but do you think like material and not material is like a true dichotomy? Are you with me on that? I feel like that's probably right. Like it either is material or it is not material. Do you feel good?
Yeah. Well.
Okay, me too. Cool. So let's. Go ahead.
But I'd say it's a little bit more nuanced than that, because I don't. So I would agree that material and non-material is a true dichotomy, but another problem with materialism is that what is defined as material, it changes. So, for example, the classic definition of material that the ancient atomists in like ancient Greece, the original materialist, was like, is different from modern day like quantum material.
Yeah, totally fine. I'm gonna go there in just a second, Hannah. I love where your mind's going though, because we're all three of us might be on the same wavelength right now, which may spell chaos and anarchy for the rest of the world. So be watching out and send super chats, because it might be your only time to. But no, Hannah, here's what I'm thinking. If we accept that material and not material is a true dichotomy, I think the next step there is for us to recognize that there is non-overlapping criteria for those two categories. There may be some shit that overlaps, but there must be something about the material category that is starkly in contrast to the not material category. I think if we sit down and we put some criteria in the material category, one of the things we're going to come up with is the laws of logic. Right? Identity, non-excluded middle, non-contradiction, all that good shit, right? Fun stuff. What do you think fits in that box for not material? Can you give me any characteristics whatsoever?
So I would say non-material things are things which explain phenomena which are not reducible to empirical observation. And
so they have identity, non-contradiction, and non-excluded middle is what it sounds like to me. All of those things would have identity, correct?
Are you asking if I believe those are material or non-material?
No. It's no. Different question. Say the thing you just said again. What's the criteria for non-material? And then just stop. What is that criteria?
Okay. The criterion for non-material is something which is which exists in phenomena, but is not reducible strictly to empirical observation.
Awesome. So it must be itself and not itself, correct? It cannot be anything else but itself. It has to have identity, right?
Yeah, everything has to have.
Okay,
I accept the law of identity.
So then we've got this dichotomy here that currently does not have any non-overlapping criteria. So we have to go to something else. So the next thing we would go to is the non-excluded middle, right? Or the non-contradiction, and then the non-excluded middle. And I think, just for brevity's sake, we're going to find that all of the same criteria sits on both sides of this dichotomy. And I think what you're going to find is that can't be the case. Non-material stuff cannot adhere to the same criteria as material stuff. And if at the end of the day, all of the non-material criteria is exactly the same as the material criteria, it kind of seems like maybe there's not really this dichotomy that we're talking about. And maybe everything is answerable by the thing we all agree on, which is material. That's what I think we'll find. And I think if you continue to list out the criteria for non-material stuff, you're going to find out very quickly that is not a way that leads you to a place of saying non-material stuff is real. But we've been going for like 30 minutes already, Hannah, and I know that's kind of shitty that I'm just going to like end real abruptly after saying that, but I am going to be kind of shitty. I'm terribly sorry, but thank you.
Can I just give Hannah some food for thought before we
Absolutely.
Hannah, I was listening to your description there, and I just want to give you this question to chew on, in case you want to call us again some other time. Do you think that the laws of mathematics are prescriptive or descriptive? Mm-hmm. And you don't need to answer that right now, but I think the way that I would address what you were saying about materialism and the idea that numbers have to exist as ideal objects could be related to that question. So I don't want to, that's kind of a whole nother can of worms that we don't necessarily need to get into now, but just give you something to think about. And then you can call back another time.
Yeah, thank you. I think you've called in a few times, Hannah, and I think I've been enjoying them more and more. So thank you so much. We're going to let you go very abruptly. Again, I know maybe I could be accused of being shitty, but I'll just take it. And whatever, because we have super chats to read. I'm going to read this one first from Jonathan France for $1.99. Cubes upon you, cubes upon your spirit, cubes upon your cow. All of it. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I appreciate that. And we have $10 from Miranda Rensberger, who's been a member for 1 year, saying, how many super chats needed to get SR to regrow the mustache? And if you don't know what Miranda is talking about, you need to go and watch the last 2 episodes of Truth Wanted, because I got in trouble. And then
we should probably test that. We should see how many super chats we get today, and then see if that's enough.
If $50 comes in, I'll be really thinking about it for sure. I will really be thinking about it. But we do have $2 for Kelly Laughlin, been a member for 2 years, saying, I'm still waiting to do a 24-hour stream with SR. Look, that's okay. So here's what we do. Look, you send in the super chats and we'll tally them. Okay. Doesn't matter what it can be $1, can be $100, your choice. Doesn't matter. Okay. Anyone will count. You send in the super chats during this episode. If they say mustache, okay, we'll count that for one side. If it says 24-hour stream, we'll do the 24-hour stream on the other side. Whoever has the most at the end, that's what we'll do. We'll go with that. I have no idea if this is okay or not on the cruise side. They are not saying anything to me. I did not clear this with anybody, and we have calls to take. So let's roll right in.
Let's quickly change the subject and move on.
We're going to go up to Pennsylvania. We're going to talk to Watcher. He, him pronouns, is a theist, wants to talk about reasons to believe in God. Well, hey, Watcher, you were chatting with SR and Scott Dickie. What is up?
Hey, what's happening, SR? What's going on, Mr. Scott?
Hi, Watcher.
What you got for us today?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Very good. I hope you can hear me good. Yeah, just jumping off of another interaction with another atheist show. I was offering love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control as evidence something that I experienced because of the reality of the Holy Spirit in my life, and I offer that as evidence for God. What do you guys think of that?
I don't know where you came from, but I know that there's a lot of wonderful shows and people out there. I will say, I'm guessing they weren't super thrilled by that argument, and I am going to also take the stance of, yeah, I don't really find that to be super convincing, because I don't think you would even find it convincing if I told you, like, for instance, that, I don't know, I converted to Islam last night and I found all those things too, right? Or, my buddy down the road converted to Scientology 2 weeks ago and he found all those things true. So now clearly you and I are getting our Thetan levels tested and getting on our knees and praying to Lord Zenu. No, of course not. Because that, at the end of the day, while it makes us feel good, it really isn't a good justification for accepting a claim. What do you think, Scott?
Well, I think all 9 of those things I've found them to be very important in my life, and they enrich my life in such a way that even if it was a person coming from Islam or some other weird thing that you mentioned, and they said if you do this, that, or the other, you would experience all of these things, I would have to and honestly investigate it, because I found these things to be, like I said, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off, Watcher, but I mean, have you not heard? Have you not heard of the great message of the one true prophet, Muhammad? I mean, my God, he's changed millions of people's lives. I mean, have you not heard about the great one himself, the next to Jesus Christ himself, the prophet Moroni, who faithfully came down on God's command one day and spoke to the humble Joseph Smith? I mean, have you not heard of the great tales of the beauty and majesty and joy that Mormonism brings to the... Come on, man. I mean, you can't tell me that you've never heard that.
Yeah, I've heard of both Islam as well as I've been approached by people, evangelical Mormons. Also.
Of course. And they tell me their lives are so much better. Scott tells me, on the other hand, Scott tells me his life got noticeably, radically, demonstrably better in every aspect of his life when he stopped believing in all those things. So who should I believe?
I think we should believe each other. All of us, we're all experiencing things. So
yeah,
I think
but we can't all be right on that. We can't all be right.
That kind of undermines what it means to believe something, right? I mean, what you're talking about is we should kind of just go along with each other and kind of live and let live. Is that kind of the attitude that you're promoting here, or are you? I mean, because what we're talking about is we want to when we get a call that says we have reasons for believing in a God. What we're saying is we're talking about reasons that we should believe that the statement "there is a God" is true, right? So there's a difference between a belief and being able to justify something. Of course, we can believe things for good reasons and we can believe things for no reason, just because we just happen to believe it. But what I think SR's he did it in a much more flowery way than I would have said it. But what he's saying is that basically you're underdetermined here. You're not the evidence that you're presenting. Not only do we not know if that does in fact point to a God, but we do know that even if it did suggest a God, it also suggests other kinds of gods, and it also points to other non-God explanations as well. And so if you want to have reasons to believe in God, and if you want to take that a step further and have reasons to believe in a particular God, you need to have enough evidence to narrow down the field. We need to eliminate those other possibilities. Is that something that you have? Like if we take love, for example, you said love, the fact that you felt love, led you to believe that it was the Holy Spirit working in your life or being present in your life, or, you know, however you said that. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you were kind of suggesting a connection there. What's that connection? How do you get from I feel love to, oh, there must be a God?
Yeah.
It's like, all right, the connection, like it's called the fruit of the Holy Spirit, right? So it's the connection of, it's like a tree, you know, you eat the fruit of a tree. So when you experience the fruit of it, then that is the demonstration. So I would ask both of you, have either of you experienced?
No, but you're assuming your conclusion here. You're equating love with the fruit of the Holy Spirit. What my question was is, how do you make that connection? Not how do you take the next step after that? How do you know that love
I'll tell you
is the fruit of,
I'll tell you exactly how I.
Okay,
I can tell you exactly how I come to that conclusion, which is believing the word and the message of the Bible.
Okay.
That's the conclusion.
Believing that, that's how I make that connection. That's how I get that understanding.
I'm gonna shout it back to you, okay? And it might sound a little funky, but I'm doing my best to be as honest as possible. Truly, it sounds to me, Watcher, like what you said is the reason I believe is because I experienced love, and the reason that love makes me believe in God is because I believe. That sounds like a circle to me, man. It sounds like you're saying,
no, that's not
I already
believe.
Okay. I could be wrong. Help me out. It sounded like you said, I believe in God's existence because of this particular experience, love being the main thing we're focusing on.
Right.
And Scott asked,
and the nine other things.
Okay, yeah, fine. The other things too, but let's just focus on the love just for brevity's sake, so I don't have to use all my oxygen. But God exists because you've experienced love. Love is the answer to God existing because you already believed that love proves God's existence. What am I getting wrong?
I understood the message. I understood the message that was communicated to me, and then I experienced it.
So you accepted the conclusion.
I accepted what?
You accepted the conclusion before going out to investigate it, and then upon investigation found information that proved the conclusion. That's what it sounds like to me, man.
Let me try presenting your argument in a slightly different way, Watcher here. I happen to know, let's say I'm making this example. Let's say I know that God doesn't exist because I've experienced love. And since I know that love is the absence of any gods, therefore, since I experience love, then obviously that's proof then that there are no gods. Now, how is my argument, other than in substance, how is it different in form from what you were saying?
Okay, that's the same thing I experienced in my other conversation. And what you just said to me sounds like gobbledygook. And I guess what you're telling me is what I'm saying to you sounds like gobbledygook. Is that correct?
I don't think it sounds like gobbledygook, but I think it sounds like
it
an
feels
unreasonable
wrong.
Reason.
Yeah, there's something about what Scott just said that's hitting you the same way that what you said to us initially is hitting us. It's exactly the same. And the reason that it's giving us all that weird feeling is exactly the same. It's because there is something about that construction that doesn't work. There's something about that when we hear somebody justifying a conclusion based on that reasoning, we all instinctively go, hey, I don't know about that one, right? But it feels kind of right, especially when it's towards our conclusion. But yeah, please go ahead.
If a methodology can lead you to two opposing conclusions, there's a problem with that methodology. Do you agree with that?
So you think they're equal? We're both positing equal things.
We both made an argument of the same form.
What I heard from your end sounds to me like gobbledygook. But the 9 things that I enumerated that I experience don't feel like gobbledygook at all. They feel like experiences that I have in reality.
Right.
I have these in reality, and this is what I live on. This is what I daily live on. And so for me, it's real. It's reality. I'm experiencing this every day. But
Totally.
that thing that you said, I don't even understand it. It doesn't even make any sense to me.
All he's doing, all he's done. Well, let's take all 9 of those things, right? The hope and the joy and love and all of that stuff, right? All Scott has done is he has changed one aspect about your argument. And all he did was say, I know God doesn't exist because love is the negation of God's existence. Whereas you've said, I know God does exist because love is the proof of God's existence. Scott, all he did was flip that one thing, and then everything else comes along with it. And the reason that you're hearing that from him and going, God, man, something about that sounds funky, is because it is, in fact, a logical fallacy. It is something that we know in an argument construction. It does not reliably lead us to truth. It can, as Scott said just a second ago. Go ahead.
Can you explain to me how love is a negation of God's existence? I don't understand that.
I will after you explain how love affirms God's existence.
Right. It's the same construction. That's the point, is that if you get to have 6 watermelons, if you get a big sledgehammer, I get a big sledgehammer. If your name is Gallagher, my name is Gallagher. That's how it works in this argument. We have to be on equal playing field. Otherwise, we're doing this other fallacy, which is called special pleading. Right now, I think we're doing the consequent one, but I could be wrong. Anyway.
I know. I'm living my life, right? And what you just said to me again, that sounds like gobbledygook. Like it doesn't. Sounds like I'm sorry.
I don't
listen respectfully. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it really sounds like foolishness to me. What you're saying.
No worries.
It's like doesn't make any sense.
No worries. And honestly, I mean, at least for me, I don't know how.
What I presented was what I live every day, and I'm saying this is something that I experience, and because of that, it gives me confidence to believe that it's a reality. It's like it's
totally
understand what I live, like life.
And I'm gonna. Great. I want to wrap us up on this, Watcher, because we've got some other good calls. Okay. And I think one of the best things after this is for all 3 of us. We'll go back, we'll rewatch this, and we'll get back together here in the future, and we'll talk some more. Because again, I think you've been really kind. I don't think you've been an asshole. I don't think you've been dishonest or anything in this conversation. And all I want to say is when you say to me, "Hey, SR, I live this shit every day, man. The love of Jesus Christ is in my heart. The tangible differences in my life I see around me constantly. I can list them for you." All I'm saying is I get that exact same thing from the Muslims, from the Scientologists, from the non-believers. How then can we use that single methodology to help us figure out which one of us is right? I don't think we can. I think we need more stuff. And I think that methodology in and of itself will always be flawed and unreliable. But I am gonna rudely cut you off like I did the last one, Watcher. Thank you so much. You were really, really kind, and I really do appreciate you. But I am just gonna unabashedly drop you like an asshole. But no, seriously, that was a really good call. What do you think, Scott? What are your wrap up on that?
I liked it. If he thought that what we were saying was gobbledygook, I would encourage Watcher, go back and listen to that. I think the key to understanding what we were saying is to figure out what we were saying. Yeah. Okay. And so go back and listen to what we were saying and try to, and I'm not saying you need to just accept it, but at least see if you can come up is at least can you understand what we were saying? And I think that will that will shine light on the fallacy that SR was trying to point out.
Yeah. And I think, I honestly, I kind of really liked that when he was like, hey, man, everything you're just shouting to me sounds like nonsense, because I kind of think that's a super cool moment for all of us to have in these conversations, is that moment where you are really confidently explaining something that you have thought about 1 billion times over. There's this map in your head, every twist and turn along the road, right? But like we don't. And so when you put that out there for the first time and you're just super confident going through 15 pages and you get to the end and you look up and everybody's going, what are you saying? It's like, oh shit. Yeah, maybe I didn't get that just right, or maybe I didn't. It's good to have that moment.
Exactly.
To recognize the other person in this conversation, maybe listening to everything you're saying and just going, that is a tasty ass word salad, man.
I think that if there are other religious people that are watching this that maybe understood what we were saying and then heard watchers say, that sounds like gobbledygook to me, then that might enlighten those viewers as well to think if in some future time if they understand what we meant and what we said, they realize that it was in fact not gobbledygook, even though it sounded like gobbledygook to watcher. And so then if they come across that experience themselves, they can use that as a moment of self-reflection. If they hear somebody else say something and they think that sounds like gobbledygook, oh, wait a minute, watcher thought SR and Scott were spouting gobbledygook, but I didn't think it was that. Maybe I'm wrong about this being gobbledygook as well. And I think that if you take that sum total of what I just said, it might in fact be gobbledygook. I don't know. Time will tell. We'll have to see.
I just want to say gobbledygook as many times as possible now.
Exactly.
It's a great word.
Right.
And another really good word, and it doesn't have anything to do with what we're saying, but it's just a good word, higgledy-piggledy. Just throwing that out there. If you didn't know that was an English word, it is. It's been in the dictionary for a while. Higgledy-piggledy.
Maybe we can make that a thing. Maybe we can make that a thing.
We just need it. We need a counter. We need a gobbledygook counter. I'm sure we'll get that. But we have a bunch of other really, really cool calls. Paul, we are going to be coming to you in just a second. Right before we do that, I am going to tell you that if you are in the Austin, Texas area, you can follow the Atheist Community Austin on Meetup. And you can keep up with all the incredible, cool things that are happening at the Free Thought Library and around the town. tiny.cc/ACA meetup. You can come to the Philosophy Under the Stars, the game night. I hear there is even more stuff. Almost every night of the week, there is something going on. So if you are not already involved, get involved. Also, you can join the weekly watch parties at the Free Thought Library on Sundays for live viewings of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience every single Sunday. The doors are open at noon, and it is a great freaking time. I can tell you that because I have been down there with none other than Mr. Scott Dickie himself at one point, and you should get down there if you have the opportunity.
And we probably were spouting gobbledygook there too.
Honestly, that's right. Let's just, for more gobbledygook,
right, there we go.
Somebody involved. We don't know who yet. It could be us. It could be Paul, but somebody is going to be bringing the gobbledy and the gook. And
it's safer if they're transported in separate containers.
Right. You can't mix them on a plane.
Right.
Yeah. They're problems. We're going to go out to Arizona. Paul, him wants to talk about the grounding for knowledge. Hey, Paul, you are on Atheist Experience. What's up?
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. How are you?
Oh, hey, well, I'm only going to bring the gobbledy. I'm not going to bring the gook. Someone else is
all right. Meet us halfway.
All right. So I was calling regarding the grounding for knowledge. And one of my questions is normally, and this will be, honestly, it'll be the second time I've ever called one of these,
cool
atheist type, chats and stuff. So let's see if y'all can help me out here. So one of my biggest questions I usually ask is on the atheist side, if you guys can, what is the ontology behind your epistemology, metaphysics, and ethic for the grounding of knowledge to be able to make things meaningful and intelligible on your worldview that is not God?
Yeah. I could go a couple of different routes with this. Like, for instance, I could just go with like the route of like, hey, maybe I don't have one. I'm kind of comfortable with that I'm not, I'm not, solid on that. But how do you feel about foundherentism by Susan Hawk?
No, explain it to me. I'm not familiar with it.
It's kind of a blending of coherentism and foundationalism.
Okay, and how would that make knowledge meaningful and intelligible?
Right. So are you familiar with coherentism and foundationalism and then infinitism? Are you familiar with the Munchausen's trilemma?
I may be a little bit. Yeah, if you can just.
That's okay. It's okay if not. I'll happily walk through it. Okay. But the concept is basically that it all falls down to one of these three things, seemingly, and that being that you just have an infinite chain. An infinite regress of things justifying the other things, right? And then you have the foundationalism, which is like presuppositionalism, and that's just you have just the certain claims that just we stop right there, right? The brute facts type of stuff. And then coherentism is basically like a storybook. It's that the start and the finish all make sense with each other, and that's what gives us. So that's called the Munchausen's trilemma, is that it seems to be those three things that sit as kind of the basis there. But then Susan Hawk, I want to say like in 2000, she started talking about foundherentism. Now, I don't think it's super caught on or anything, but it is at least an interesting attempt. So I'll shut up for a second so you can kind of give your thoughts.
Yeah. So I'm kind of familiar with it, but yeah, I kind of know the Agrippa's trilemma. That's kind of what you were going.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Munchausen's, yeah. Munchausen's trilemma.
So with that, you see, there seems to be a little bit of issues at least on my side, because of course, in my view, an infinite regress is, to me, and the way I see it, is utterly absurd and impossible. And as far as circular reasoning, well, because why infinite regress is impossible?
Yeah.
Right. Well, because if the regress would be possible, an infinite regress, then we really wouldn't be able to get to where we're at now, because we'd have an infinite amount of time that we'd have to get.
Can we go forward infinite? Here. Can we go forward infinitely?
You can go, yes, you can go forward infinite. You cannot go to the past. That would require like a timestamp, and it stops it somewhere to be able to.
So hang on, Paul, real quick. What are you using to arbitrarily cut off the ability to go both forward and backwards infinitely? You need a criteria to determine that. Otherwise, it would be more parsimonious. It would bring in less assumptions to say that it can just work both ways, that infinite can go both forward and backwards infinite. Does that make sense what I just said, or was it gobbledygook?
Yeah. I kind of see, but to me, it doesn't make sense, because if you'd have to contend with an infinite past, you can never go into an infinite future. That would be impossible. And another thing is, I'm sorry?
Yeah, I have a problem with that assertion, right? Because that's all it is.
Okay.
All you've done there is just said the reason. Hang on real quick. All you've done there, Paul, is just said the reason you can't have an infinite past is because you just fucking can't, man. And it's like, well, that's cool that you're positing that, but it sounds to me like it's then on the same equal footing as just positing that, yeah, actually you can, especially if you already agree that it goes infinitely in one direction. Seems more parsimonious, fewer assumptions, right?
Okay, well, as I mentioned before, I mean, if there was an infinite regress, then that means all things that are, contingent between time space would be of a secondary order. There would be no primary to get the train
but then
moving.
It couldn't go infinitely in the future either. We would be stuck in this moment forever.
Oh,
you got to see that, right?
You would be able to go. No.
You couldn't go infinitely in the future because you would never be able to traverse the infinite. You would never be able to traverse the infinite points. That's what I'm saying.
You'd never be able to reach the omega.
Oh, and that's the thing, right? You'll never be able to reach it into the past.
No. Hang on. Paul, hang on. I said something very clear there, and you're going to have to shift your position just a little bit. Either you're going to have to accept that there is no infinite potential for the future, or there is an infinite potential in both categories. You cannot have just one. You cannot say there is an infinite past possibility and no infinite future possibility, or there is an infinite future possibility and no infinite past, because of what I just said. If you are accepting that an infinite past means that you could never traverse the individual points to get to now, an infinite future would also fail for that reasoning. I muted you. I'm so sorry. I'm going to bring you back in. You're going to hear a beep. The beep's gone probably.
Yeah.
Go ahead and respond.
No, and I understand. And see, that's kind of, I see it as like as a false dichotomy, because the way I see things something needs to start and you get the train moving for it to start moving forward. And if there is an infinite regress and it's everything's of a secondary order, there is no primary order. And without a primary order to get the train moving, you can't have a secondary.
Why do you need to get the train moving?
Because
what if the train has always been moving?
Right.
What if the train has always been moving?
So how can you get to the past if the train's always been moving infinitely into the past? When would you ever reach?
No. What if the train has always been moving?
Yeah.
Well, then that would be incoherent, because then nothing would be meaningful to start anything at all.
Well, how would it be?
You're assuming that it has to start. I'm suggesting to you, what if the train has always been moving? If that's the case, then there is no start. It was just always moving.
So just to so then how would we even get forward into the future with the train that just has always been moving without ever starting anything? How would we even have a secondary order to begin with? I'm sorry?
You're asking, how would we get to a situation where the train has always been moving from where?
Infinitely from the past. So if a train's been infinitely moving in the past, let's say, for example, let's just get a thought experiment. Let's say we are immortal, right? And we produced a machine that allows us to go into the past linearly, date to date, year by year, all the way to the past. And if there was an infinite past, how long would it take for us to reach that point in time?
To reach what?
To reach the infinite past.
Right, infinite, right? Time. So then,
what does infinite past mean?
So given that example, how, if there was an infinite past to contend with, how could you ever reach the present?
So the problem right now, and I know this is a little difficult, especially with this, because infinity is weird. Okay, it is a weird thing, right?
Yeah.
But
it is.
Here's the problem: everything you just said is not a reason to accept that infinity can't go into the past. Right? All you've said is, yeah, but if there is that infinite past, how would we get here? I don't actually need to answer that for it to be the case that there is an infinite past, right? Us not having an answer to that question does not negate the truth as to whether or not the past is infinite, right? And I'll tell you the more important thing, hang on just a second, Paul, okay? The more important thing is that actually what it is a logical fallacy. And so that construction of an argument cannot reliably lead us to truth. If I say the past could be infinite, we don't know, and you go, nuh-uh, and I go, well, yeah, it could, right? Just based on logically going infinitely into the future. And then you go, yeah, but how would we ever get here if it's infinite in the past? That is not actually pushback on the statement that based on the logic of time going infinitely in the future, it should have the same criteria in the back, unless there is a distinguishing criteria that separates those two. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, not really. I guess maybe I probably have a hard time, kind of.
It's okay. Let me try again. Yeah, it is. It's all weird, but let me try this again. This is the example that J Mike. Hang on just a second, Paul. Hang on just a second. This is the example that J Mike always gives, okay? And I love this one. So it's a good one and I'll steal it from him. If you and I both have a television and we're standing in front of each other, right? And you go, my television works. It's got great picture. And I go, mine too. And then you go, yours has a hole in it. Have we done anything to determine whether your television works?
No.
That's the response that you just gave me. The response that you just gave me is your television doesn't work, as opposed to telling me why your television does work. Now you can go ahead.
I told you that because if there wasn't, if we had an infinite regress, that means all states would be of a secondary order without a primary, and we can't have a secondary without a primary.
Right. And what was Scott's response to that?
Let's get into.
What was Scott's response to that? It's really important because you're missing out on the foundationalism aspect of it. You are assuming that we need to have that start. What Scott said was that is not an issue if we take the assumption that it has always been going. There is no necessity for that primary secondary distinction in that understanding. And that understanding of infinitism sits exactly squarely on the same level of plausibility as foundationalism and coherentism. Thus, Agrippa's or Munchausen's trilemma.
And that's probably a part I can't grasp, but I'll give this example. Okay, so it'll be a distinguishing difference. Okay, let's say for example, time is finite, right? There wasn't an infinite past, and we just began. Something began to exist. We have square zero when we start. Mm-hmm. From square zero, we can move into the future from that point and on, right? Okay, there's nothing that says that we couldn't move from that point in future on forward infinitely.
Except for the reason that we could no, except for the reason that you've given us. No. The reason we could never make it to infinity is because it would be impossible for us to physically traverse the infinite individual points. That was your reasoning for not allowing infinity into the past. And all I'm saying is I'm going to agree with you, Paul, and it works both ways.
And see, now, and with me, I don't see that as being coherent. It doesn't make sense at all.
Why? How are you able to traverse an infinite future but not an infinite past? What is the difference about infinity?
Well, the thing is, going infinitely into the past, that means you have to contend with an infinite amount of time to reach the current present. And that would make
the same thing going into the future. You would never reach the future.
Why is that a problem? If the past is infinite, why is you have to go through an infinite number of time moments to get to the present? Why is that an issue?
Correct. We wouldn't be here because we wouldn't be here.
No, that's your conclusion. What I'm asking you is why? Why do you think that?
Why? Because we could. Because if there was an infinite past to contend with, we logically and physically could not be here now.
So how do you?
That's your conclusion. Why is what my question was. Why? That thing you just said.
Because you would
put why in front of that.
Okay, so why, man? That's pretty tough, right? Because I mean,
of course,
why? Yeah, I mean, because the only thing is you'd have to contend with an infinite amount of time to be able to get where we're at now. I mean,
so that's not a problem. If there is an infinite past, then we would have an infinite past available to get us to the current moment.
But there wouldn't be. How can an infinite amount of past get us to the current moment when we have a whole infinite amount?
If the past is infinite, then it's possible that we could have been going an infinite amount of time to get to the present.
Right, like hypothetical. Let's for a second, Paul. Let's take the.
That's weird. I mean,
let's take the hypothetical. If the universe actually is infinite, right? Then we did traverse an infinite past to get here, which means it kind of makes sense that we could traverse an infinite past to get to where we could traverse an infinite amount of time to get to the future. Now, there are different sizes of infinity, which is kind of silly, but it's true. The infinite set of whole numbers is a really big number. It's a really big infinite number, but it is still technically a smaller infinity than the set of all the potential numbers, 1.1, 1.2, 1.21, 1.211, all of those are infinitely larger than that other infinite set. So I know all of this is super weird shit, man, but it does sound like to me,
man, it's weird.
It is, but it's lots of fun too. But it does sound like that if hang on just a second. I'm almost done. I swear. I'm almost done. Hang on, Paul. I hate to mute you, but I'm almost done. It does sound like to me you have to bite the bullet one way or the other. And you have to either say there's a finite past and a finite future, or there's an infinite past and an infinite future. It doesn't seem to me that you can have one and not the other, because the very criteria that you're using to discount an infinite past would still apply to you attempting to traverse an infinite future. You would still physically never be able to actually go through all of those points if what you're saying is true. But again, I think there might be infinite stuff, but I'm going to bring you back on. I'm sorry for muting you, Paul.
No,
Go ahead. Give us your thoughts.
I get it. So let's go. I like the example you gave earlier, right? When you said there's a smaller infinites as opposed to bigger infinites, and I've kind of and this is why I kind of see that where you're going with. Let me know if I'm right. You're kind of seeing time as a circular, an infinite circular motion of past, present, and future, just essentially just moving over and over and over nonstop, right? If I get that right, I don't know if I'm understanding that right.
Not necessarily. A and B theory of time are lots of fun to play around with, but I'm not positive.
That would be one way to satisfy what SR was trying to describe.
Yes, that would.
Yeah, another way would be just an infinite number line.
Yeah, just an infinite number line. So.
See, and I guess a lot of it, like the way I'm looking at it, I'm looking at time more of a linear fashion than I am, I guess, in the way you guys are looking at it, right?
I get that.
And that's probably where.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So what I'm trying to get to is this is where the part where kind of it becomes a little bit more incoherent in my mind, I guess, because from what you use that the larger infinites versus smaller infinites, where you said you can be 1.1, 1.11, 1.1 to the infinite.
Right.
See, to me, let's say, for example, there was a clock, right? There's a clock, 1 to 12, right? And to get from 1 to 2, if we're going to use an infinite amount of numbers to get from 1 to 2, right? That would be incoherent, because then the time, the time to which the time would be moving. Right. Well,
how many numbers?
Right. So
how many numbers are between the number 1 and the number 2? How many numbers are between those two numbers?
Would be infinite, right?
It is infinite, right? It is infinite,
right.
But it's a smaller. It's a smaller infinite than the infinite that is all the even numbers, which is a smaller infinite. It's fucking weird. It is fucking weird, Paul. I'm with you, man.
I do, and this is the part where it's just like, okay, so if there's an infinite number between 1 and 2, and this is the part where sometimes math doesn't cohere or stand in causal relations with reality, right? Because if it took an infinite amount of numbers between 1 and 2 to reach the number 2, right, we never get there. Right, we never get there.
But we do every single time we count. Every single time we count, we somehow get there. There's something.
Yes,
you're talking Zeno's paradox here, right?
Yeah. That's exactly. Yeah. Well, hang on, Paul. Let me give you just a couple more seconds to wrap it up, because we've been going for about 20, and we got a couple other really good calls on. But I love the fact that you. No, it's okay. That's okay, because you'll call back in, because you are an awesome interlocutor, dude. I have loved having this conversation with you, and I genuinely think that if more people, atheists, Christians, Scientologists, whatever, if more of us were engaging in these types of discussions, I really, really do think we'd have a better world, man. So I really appreciate you calling and being very kind and generous. Please call back, man. Seriously, Paul. I want to keep good callers like you. Okay, so don't let me down. Don't make me sad. No, but seriously, thank you so much, Paul. I am gonna just drop you like a hot rock, though. I'm so sorry, because I'm rude, and I'm on this show, and we got a time crunch.
I think he made a strong argument that everybody should take calculus.
Everybody should take calculus. That's what I was talking about before the fucking show start, and I will gladly say it again. Take calculus. Math is cool. Math really is cool, and I genuinely think that Paul was super engaged.
Yeah,
I felt like Paul was listening. He was responding. Yeah, I felt like this is something that he's going to think about, for the next few days, and he's going to look further into, and he's going to have more conversations. I think
infinity is really a difficult thing for people to wrap their minds around, and I see it every day.
Weird. Yeah, it's so weird. But again, it technically, there is an infinite amount of numbers between 1 and 2. There's an infinite amount of space between all of. It's so weird, but like somehow we make it possible. Somehow we make stuff happen. So
for sure.
I am going to read this super chat from Nero Mall, been a member for 1 year, sending $2 and saying B times supremacy. Hell yeah. I'd like that. B time, or no, wait, no, who is that? Who's that other one? There's another one that's up there. That's the one I just read, Nero Mall, B Time Supremacy. That's great. That's great. And then there's this other one I see here. I don't know. There it is from Sean saying 10 to the 128th possible games of chess, and yet we can still play chess. Right. There's an absurd amount of fucking right. Yeah, absolutely. Like there's numbers are really, really interesting and weird and cool. And again, all those fun things about.
All right. Well, that was good.
That was good. Yeah. Thank you. I'm back to focus. I know what we're doing here. And
you know what we're doing. Gobbledygook. That's what we're doing.
Gobbledygook. And I'll tell you something, we love the gobbledy and the gook. We love it all here. But one thing I can tell you is not gobbledygook, is the amazing, incredible, absolutely stupendous, and not at all upset with me crew who put this show together every week. They are an amazing group of people. Look at that. Not disappointed in the slightest. I love cows, and we've got a cow there. And oh man, it's great. Wonderful, wonderful people who think to themselves every time I'm on, oh my God, can't I
might not be mad with you, but show ain't over yet.
That's right. We still got calls.
Yep.
Oh God. Remember to send those super chats and comment below the video that you love SR and that you don't want him kicked off of the show. But
save SR.
Save SR. That's right. I just need a shirt. But we are going to go up to the Great White North. We're going to go up to Canada. We're going to talk with James. Him is a theist and wants to talk about the existence of life. Well, I like that, James. You're chatting with Secular Rarity and Scott Dickie. What is up?
Right on. Hey, how you guys doing?
Hi, James. Doing well.
Good. I'd like to start with a premise, if I can try, and that is that all we know is that we're here, and we don't know how we got here. Can we agree on that?
I wouldn't say that's all we know.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's all we know, but I'd say we it's not a terrible sentiment that you're expressing
we
there.
We can agree that we're here.
Yeah, for sure we're here. And we're not 100% positive about how we got here.
Right, and so how we got here is the part that is either faith or theory. And research, science is endeavoring to find out. What was that?
I was just kind of agreeing, just saying like, yeah, sure. There's some different answers that are posited by many different people, some with books, some with revelation, some with test tubes and math. But yeah, what you got?
So what I'm saying with that is that there's no proof. And the way it works is that there's theory, and then you give a list of reasons that would support the theory,
I think there's I think there can be some proof, right? Like, for instance, like, I know I have some proof as to how I'm like here on this show, right? For instance, like I got a message, that said like, hey, come do it at this time. And then I have this camera, so there's some stuff that we, and we could prove that, right? Like I have this house, I pay a lease on this thing, like I have that on paperwork. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about humanity, mankind. All we know is how we got here. We don't know, and we have theories and research.
I know how I got here.
Yeah,
I think so. There's no proof. I can't prove it. There's no proof to be made.
I don't know. I think there is. Again, I know I'm just being a little bit nitpicky, James, but like for instance, I think we have really, really solid proof that your parents had sex to get you, I think we have really, really solid proof that like that is kind of how got here. I also think we have really, really solid proof, for instance, about like, evolution and like changing of allele frequencies and like different physical makeups and, genetic code. And like we did, lay out the whole human genome a while ago. So like we have some proof, right?
Right. Well, evolution is a theory, and
so
using theory.
So what do you mean by theory when you say that? Because then I'll tell you what the other people mean by theory when they say evolution is a theory. What do you mean when you say the word theory?
a theory is an idea that may be true but isn't proven.
Awesome. So
Okay.
in the scientific communities, and believe me, I am not smart enough to be a part of these. They regularly kick me out, James. They laugh me out the door and tell me to go play in the sandbox. But in those spaces, they use the term hypothesis more so to kind of talk about what you're talking about. So there's this other term, though, that I would say is something that's more common parlance for you and I, right? Smarty pants, you know, they can say whatever the fuck they want, but we would say this other term like a fact. You know, like this is a water bottle in Elliot's hand. That's a fact. Like that is just so fucking solid to believe that, man, if there wasn't actually a water bottle in my hand right now, that would be so radically altering to the way that I understand the entire world. That's the way that the science smarty people mean theory. So when they say the germ theory of disease, what they mean is germs make diseases. Germs are real and they're all the fuck around us all the fucking time. And if we somehow disproved this, it would be so radical to everything we understand about reality. Does that make sense? Does that kind of clear up how they're using that term?
Yeah, but maybe we don't have a premise then, because I'm saying that all we know is our record going back to 3,500 years BC. That's all we know.
But that's not what evolution is talking about, right? Evolution's not talking about, see, how we know evolution is a thing has nothing to do with human written records, right?
Right.
Right. So we do have proof.
It's a theory. It's considered, everyone's pretty sure it's true, but it's a theory that's pretty sure it's true. Relativity is pretty sure it's true. No one knows for sure if it's true. It remains a theory, but everyone's.
That's how science works, right?
Yeah. We never get to a place of 100% certainty. The big smarty pants are never going to get to the 100%. It definitely is this and nothing else. Right. So like the best we can get is this, like, we're pretty damn confident, you know, like 97, 98%, but like we're pretty fucking confident, you know. This is where you and I would just say, oh, it's a fact, you know. Bill down the road, Bill's a mechanic. He's been a mechanic for 40 fucking years. That's just a fact. There's no theory about that. There's no hypothesis about that. He just is that damn thing. You know, and the same thing I would say again is how the science smarty people use theory.
If you think we don't have evidence for evolution, do you think we should believe it?
No.
Okay, so you believe that a God created us. What's your evidence?
There isn't evidence. It's faith. We have.
Okay, so if I shouldn't believe something because I have no evidence, does it same thing apply to you? You don't have evidence, so should you believe it?
I have a list of reasons why I believe it.
You just said you have no evidence.
At the beginning. Right. You can't have evidence. You can't have that.
Okay, so if you can't have evidence, then you don't have evidence. Is that right? Can't have evidence is not a reason to not have to get evidence. It's just an explanation on why you don't have any evidence. So you said that if I don't have evidence for evolution, I shouldn't believe that, but you don't think that same principle applies to you. If you don't have evidence of a God, then you shouldn't believe it, according to your logic.
You should regard evolution as a theory, and that you don't know for sure, and it's an.
Should I believe that it's true?
And same here with that. With me,
should I believe it's true? Should I believe evolution is true? If there were no evidence for it, although there's tons and tons of evidence, but let's assume for a second that you're right and that there's no evidence for evolution. Should I believe that it's true?
If there's no evidence and. If it's a good theory, and if you want to believe it's true.
That we'd have to decide good theory after the fact.
It's a subjective thing. If it's a good theory, You know, and then you.
I think you're
look at
trying
the list
very
of
hard
reasons.
to avoid saying no. I think you're trying really, really hard
Yeah.
to not say no,
No.
because now you know where this is going to lead. So if
No,
you have no evidence
yeah.
for God, then why should we believe in God?
Well, there's a list of reasons why to believe in God.
Okay, let's
And
start with
that's-
number
and
one.
that's how it's theory and list of reasons.
Mhm.
Okay, reason one is the existence of life. Matter does not create life. Matter creating life.
Hold on.
And observed.
The existence of, you said life only comes from other life. So what's your evidence for that?
That's what is observed. A scientist.
No, we can't observe
determines
that.
all truth by observation.
So we can't
That is what
observe. We
observed,
can't
right?
observe that life never came from non-life.
Well, shouldn't it always be happening? Since when does one thing happen?
Okay,
Build the
you're
world
asking
with
me
life.
questions.
Build
What I'm
the-
asking you for is evidence. If you don't have any evidence, then you can just say, I don't have any evidence. That's fine.
Well, how can you say that matter created life? Same way.
I didn't. You
say matter-
said life only comes from life. I didn't say
Observe.
life might come from non-life. I don't know.
Okay. Well,
I'm only going to say things that I feel confident in and that I can back up.
right. Okay. So
Do you think that I'm being overly cautious with myself? Or do you think I'm
no,
kind of
you're
doing things the right way?
seems right, like the right way.
Okay. So then are you going to do it that way too?
Sure.
Okay. So if you don't have evidence for your God, then you should just, I'm not saying that you should believe there is no God. I'm just saying you should withhold your belief that there is a God and just say, I don't know.
Right. You start with I don't know. We all
Okay.
have to be agnostic. We don't know.
So if we start with I don't know, then you need evidence to get off of I don't know. You're kind of stuck on that island.
Right.
Right.
You need evidence to get off of the I don't know. So that's what I'm asking you about then. And do you have any of that evidence, which you said we can't have already?
Before you respond, James, and I will let Scott lay out that question again, so you don't have to worry about memorizing it right now or anything. But just before we go any further, I want to take 2 seconds to just hardcore freaking say I am thrilled by this back and forth right now. I mean, you both have been so honest and so fucking humble. I think this is amazing. And I've just been sitting over here just clapping repeatedly like, fuck yeah, Scott. Fuck yeah, James. Like you're nailing it. So I'm sorry. I was getting real excited and I was squirming in my chair and I just had to say that. So Scott, say that, say that question again for James and then I'll just shut up and just let y'all cook.
All right. Well, I was just about to hang up on James, but I guess I can't now. So I better, I'm kidding, of course, James. I'm kidding. I agree. I think this conversation has been excellent. But so you're saying that if we don't have evidence, we shouldn't believe in something. And so then we start with I don't know, which is kind of where I am. And I'm happy to have you join me on this I don't know island. How are we going to get off? We need evidence.
Right. And so what it is, we don't know. And so we have to figure out how it is that we got here. And so you don't know, I don't know, we all don't know how it is we got here. And so that's our starting premise. And so
I would
now
suggest
we work
that
with
in
theory.
order to find that out, I would say
But
that
there's
in
things
order
that
for us to
suggest that
find
there's
that
things
way
that
of
could-
getting off, we need to gather evidence. And if there's no evidence to be gathered, then we're stuck on I don't know.
Okay, well, start with it looks like it. It looks like it, it's the world was created, man was created, human.
How do you know that?
Okay.
Though? There's no evidence.
Yeah.
How do you know that it looks like it's
I think from the
created?
beginning. So that's starter. That's one, right? And life creating life is another one.
Now, before we no. I want you to back up number one before you go to number two. We're not just going to have a list of gobbledygook here. Huh? See what I did there?
You brought it back.
So we need to, how does that, we need to figure out how we got here. How do we do that?
Right. We need to figure out how. we don't know. All we could do is work with theories, how we got here.
See, I don't agree with that, James. I think there are methods for us to be able to determine, at the very least, some information as to how we got here. Now, maybe not 100%, right? Maybe not all the way to that infinite past that Paul and myself and Scott were talking about a minute ago. Maybe we can't go that far back. But there are clear methodologies that we use, right? Like before you called this show, wherever you are right now, I bet you could probably retrace most of your steps today. Maybe not for the whole month, maybe not for the whole 5 years, but I mean, come on. If somebody walks into your kitchen with a birthday cake and a receipt from Dairy Queen, you have some methodologies as to figuring out how this guy got here with that cake, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there are some things that already exist for us. Like, for instance, if I wasn't sure and I wanted to find out if I had more brothers and sisters or more relatives out there in my city or in another city, I could go get a DNA test. And we could compare that to other people that have gotten those DNA tests. And we could look at those and go, wow, this one is so freaking similar. And we can do that, funny enough, with non-humans as well. We can take your dog right now, if you have one, I don't know. But let's say a friend of mine has this cute little Shih-Poo, adorable little fucker. We know exactly who her mama and daddy are. And we can find her damn cousins all over the state. All we got to do is get a little bit of that dog DNA. And we can do this with a bunch of things. In fact, we can do it with every living thing. And there does seem to be this really interesting thread that when we go back in time, we kind of go back in the DNA code as well. Something about like 20% of us, 20% of our DNA and a banana's DNA are exactly the same or something.
Yeah, something like that.
You go like, I'm sure there are geneticists out there that are going to yell at me, James. All the smarty people are going to hate me right now. But you go literally, you just like, if you printed it out on fucking paper, you would go like 10 fucking pages before you go, wait a second, this isn't a banana. Like, that's wild, man. So we have that methodology at the very least. Maybe we don't know the first time some fish crawled out on land, but we do actually have fish that walk right now, and their DNA bears these really interesting markers that are connected to other walking, living things today. That's pretty cool.
Right. So what you're saying is that if there's sufficient criteria, then we can make a good assessment. We could believe.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what I'm challenging is there sufficient criteria to know that we started,
Good question.
how we started, and how far we go back?
Absolutely phenomenal question. And I do think the answer to that is yes. And I do think myself and Scott could present that information. But here is what I am going to ask, James. And I know I'm giving you homework. Would you mind maybe coming back and hanging out when somebody like Dr. Ben or Forrest Valkai is on? Because like those guys really have, I mean, Forrest Valkai is like into biology stuff. Ben's a medical doctor, but both of those guys would have a lot more knowledge and be able to go like, oh yeah, super cool, man. Yeah, here is what that criteria is. And here's how we know all that. Does that sound fair, man? Like they would be a better resource on that for you.
Right. But also, SR, you just demonstrated something interesting, is that you believe this DNA stuff that you said and all that, but you don't know anything about it. I know nothing.
Oh, no. I'm going to mute you. I'm going to mute you completely unabashedly. I have absolutely no qualms and will not be apologizing for that one, James. That is definitely not what I said. In no way, shape, or form did I ever say, I don't know anything about DNA. I'm just accepting it. No, in fact, I think I made it fairly clear that I do actually have some level of knowledge. Not an expert. Just going to say that 1,000 times over. Not an expert. But I do understand just a little bit enough to be able to say, hey, actually, yes, this is a good justification for coming to this conclusion. What I offered was somebody that could do it better. What I offered was somebody that could give you the exact data points and the year and the name on the paper, okay? Not that I didn't know and I just accept it. But anyway, once again, I am just going to be a dick, James, and I am just going to drop you with no shame in my heart because I am a sinning heathen, terrible, whatever. I don't know. Fuck it. Anyway, but thank you, James. Seriously. I really, really thought that was a phenomenal conversation. I thought the way that you engaged in that should be something that other callers to this show look at and try to emulate. You were honest. You were genuine. We disagree, you know, but that's okay. That's the point, man. But seriously, please, if you can, call back in when Forrest or Dr. Ben is on. Those guys would definitely be able to provide even better data. So, but thank you so much, James. I'm going to let you go because we got a couple final things and we're going to hang out in the Discord for a little bit. Maybe. I know we're already running late, so I'm not going to take any more time. I'm just going to jump right the fuck into it. We're going out to Mexico. We're talking with Ulrich. He, him wants to talk about the existence of church proving God. Well, Ulrich, we are ready. We are here for it. What do you got for us today?
Yeah, so Jesus said he left the church to the world, and here is the church as a universal proof of God's existence.
Yeah. Okay, so Muhammad said that he got a revelation from God and wrote it down in a book called the Quran, and the Quran exists today, therefore Allah is real, your God is fake, right?
The Bible is much more readily distributed.
No, just answer. So hold up, I'm sorry. Did you answer? Yeah, did you answer what I said? I said, your God can't be real because of the same criteria that you laid out about Christianity, but this time I used it for Islam. So we're doing that thing again where the same methodology gives us counter conclusions, right? So one of us, oh, it doesn't. Oh, it's not written in the Quran that Muhammad received a revelation directly from Allah through the Archangel Gabriel and that it was written down in its entirety. It's not said that, and the Quran doesn't exist today?
Yes, it does. But how many Muslim callers do you have? Almost none, because Christianity
does that matter?
Bigger.
What does that matter? So what, there's more Christians, so now your thing is more correct? That's crazy. You know that's not true. How many Muslims actually are in the world, by the way? I don't think you'd like the number. It's a lot bigger than you're making it sound. Like 1 billion,
something like that.
Why does that matter?
It's a bit closer to 2, but that doesn't matter either way. The point is, here's the issue. If your thing, Ulrich, come on. If your reason for saying Christianity is true is because in the book that already accepts Christianity is true, it said a thing, and that is the case today, can you see how that isn't going to be a good path to leading us to truth? Because Scott and I have books, the Scientologists have books, the Mormons have books, and all of their books all agree that they're right, and they say things, and those things are true.
But they didn't come to pass.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Don't you know about the one in the Quran about building skyscrapers in the Middle East? What's been happening in Dubai? Ooh, boom! All the Dawa boys right now are fucking loving it. They're saying, Alhamdulillah, yes, praise SR, our brother in Muhammad. Yes! Come on, man. Every single religion has this. Every single one of them has this stuff.
Fulfilled prophecies is unique to Christianity, and there are.
Oh my gosh, let's talk about any one of them. Name a single fulfilled prophecy, and we will. Are you familiar, though, before we go through this, do you know the man sometimes referred to as Paulogia, but his name is Paulogia? Are you familiar with his criteria for what makes a prophecy a prophecy?
No.
Okay, so he has it well laid out in a video, and you should just go watch it on your own time whenever you have time. I love his stuff. But in general, this is a very basic list of criteria that must be adhered to. And I'm probably not going to get them all right off of memory, just so we know. But It's that the prophecy has to be made very clearly before the event described, right? It cannot be vague and be answered by multiple occurrences. It must be specific, right? People can't be actively attempting to bring it to pass, right? So, and again, I think there's a couple more. I think there's actually 6 in total, but with that kind of in mind, let's talk about a single fulfilled prophecy from the Bible. Anyone whatsoever. Please don't say Tyre, though. I will talk about it, but please don't say Tyre.
Nobody wants to go there.
Nobody wants to go to Tyre. Okay. Give me a prophecy, Ulrich.
The Jews distributed to the whole world and then coming back in the last days into Palestine.
Do you think it's the last
But
days
from
right
like
now?
that-
Is that what you're saying? Are you saying that the prophecy is in the Bible? And I'm going to need chapter and verse here in a second. But are you saying the prophecy in the Bible is Jews will be kicked out of their ancient homeland, Jerusalem, and then eventually, when the apocalypse is occurring and the world is falling around all of us in hellfire and brimstone, they will be back in that ancestral homeland? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but I don't say
Okay,
it's when the
chapter and verse, and do
event
you
happens.
think that it's the end times? Chapter and verse, and do you think it's the end times now? Because that has to be the case. It has to be the apocalypse right now if what you're saying is like that is a fulfilled prophecy. Otherwise, it is potentially a prophecy that could be fulfilled when the apocalypse and the end times actually occur. So, are we in the end times?
Fulfilled.
Are we in the end times?
Fulfilled.
No. The prophecy that you said, stop, Ulrich. I muted you. I'm going to take a breath myself. I want you to do the same. Okay. When you come back, I need to be clear on this. Is the prophecy that the Jews will be kicked out of their ancestral homeland and then brought back at the end of days? Because if so, just to put all my cards on the table, you have to accept that it is currently the end of days. Otherwise, that prophecy can't be fulfilled, right? Okay. So the other thing I would like is just chapter and verse of where the fuck to find that. So those 2 things, I'm going to unmute you right now. It's going to be a loud beat probably. You're back on, Ulrich. What do you got for me? Chapter and verse, and are we in the end times right now?
Deuteronomy 28:64.
Love it. Love it. I'll look that up. Are we in the end times?
Maybe.
Okay. But we have to be if that prophecy is fulfilled.
No, because it says they are back before the end times. Before might mean a long time.
So let me make sure I got this right.
I must have the wrong verse here.
Deuteronomy 28:64.
Yes.
Okay, mine says, tell me if I'm wrong, Scott. Mine says, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone.
That's what I see. You must have King James version up.
Yeah.
Has that happened or has it not happened? It has happened, right?
Can I, let me, okay. Hang on. I'm going to read it again. Okay. Because nowhere in this fucking sentence that you just gave us, Ulrich, nowhere in this sentence does it say the thing that you said. You said the Jews got kicked out ancestral lands and then came back before the end times. This says, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, probably talking about the Israelites, the Jews, the Hebrews. I'm comfortable with that. Okay. The Lord shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth, even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods. Not returning yet, apparently. There thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. At no point in that sentence does it say that they will be brought back to their ancestral homelands?
Deuteronomy 33:5. There it says it.
So it's a different verse, though. That's all I want, real quick. I'll go look that up. Ulrich, you are an adult, and I know you're a good person. And I know that the next words out of your mouth are just going to be, hey, my bad, I just made a simple mistake. It's actually this other chapter and verse. And we'll go look at that. But tell me, Ulrich. Yeah, me too. I make mistakes all the time, man. No problem. No worries whatsoever. You didn't make...
wrong. I was totally right. Sorry, I was totally right. The verse says the Jews will be scattered, and the other verse says they will come back.
So hang on.
Wait, what was the second one again?
Hang on.
Deuteronomy 33, what?
30, I don't know. We'll figure that out here in just a second. I got him muted. Ulrich, you can combine these two verses, and I'll accept this, okay? But that is not what you said, bro. And there is no reason to try so hard to be right on this. Just say, hey, man, I actually made a mistake. It is these two verses combined together, and then we'll go through them together in the last little bit of time. But if you can't come back on and just be honest and just be like, oops, my bad, man. Seriously, it is just an oops, my bad moment. I want that, man. Please. Help me out here. I'm going to unmute you. Ulrich.
Okay.
Oops, my bad, right?
Go for a topic then you ask for verses, and I give you one which is actually amazing, and that was just the scattering. The scattering is clearly there. There are tons of verses, not only one, tons of verses where it says they will come back to their homeland.
And you need both of those, and what you gave us first was one thing. So, oops, my bad, Scott and SR. Let me hear it, Ulrich. Bring it home.
Okay, Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 3.
We can fuck off, and we did. Hey, Ulrich, when you call back next time, when you make a mistake, just be a man, be an adult, say you made a mistake. It's really that simple, okay? And I did that on purpose for everybody out there who's like, wow, what a fucking asshole. Yeah, I was being an asshole, because if you cannot engage in a conversation and be comfortable enough when you make a simple, tiny mistake, like we all fucking do. I bet you I made 4 or 5 today, for fuck's sake. And if somebody would just go, hey, man, you said humble when you meant to say, this. It's like, fine, fuck me, my bad. No worries. We're going to be fine. We're going to move on. But Ulrich, don't come all up in here and be like, no, actually, I was right. I got it. No, you didn't, man. You made a simple mistake. And now you don't get the opportunity to say your message of Jesus Christ, love and hope and compassion, all because you couldn't do the thing that Jesus tells you to do anyway, which is be fucking humble. Ugh, Christians not meeting their shit.
That comes full circle all the way around back to your opening statements.
It's almost like I had planned that. I'm just going to pretend that I did.
Brilliantly engineered there, SR. Brilliant. Yeah. I am in awe. I am in awe of your skills right now.
Thank you. Oh my God, that was a great coincidence, and I will fucking take it. But thank you so much for everybody for being here. Do we want to bring up our backup? Is that cool? Should we bring up our backup? I think we should bring up
our backup and her backup.
Right? We've got backups on backups today.
There
actually.
We go.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Look at that. That's so cute. Oh, you're muted.
You're on. We can't hear.
Wait. Better? Nope. Still muted. Okay. That's okay. There's been baby noises.
I can read lips.
Baby noises going on.
She's saying, SR, you're just putting out too much gobbledygook, and I hope someday. And then she stops to give a kiss, and then okay, all right, we get it.
That's true.
We get the gist. We get the gist at least.
It's an adorable little child.
Exactly.
And, honestly, it's like, what are we doing? I said this before the show, like, we just need to do this whole show that's just puppies, none of our faces, and just like little kittens running around and playing while somebody says that the Bible's dumb or something in the background. I don't know. Anyway, thank you all so freaking much for being here. Everybody that was liking and commenting below, everybody that sent super chats, you guys are amazing. You help make this possible every single day. Without you guys, all the cool stuff that's happening in Austin would not be able to happen. So thank you so much. And this show doesn't happen without that incredible, amazing crew who I'm sure have gotten off all that steam and anger that they have towards me.
Let bygones be bygones.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It'll
It's
be
all
a
good
great,
at the end there.
it'll be a real calm after show where they don't say anything upsetting. No, it'll be great. It'll be great. No cuss words will be flown towards me. But anyway,
I'm glad we got that settled.
I had a great freaking time, Scott. Did you have a good time today?
I did. I had a good time. Of course, I was expecting it, and you fulfilled my dreams of being on a show with the ineffable. I'll say it correctly this time. Secular Rarity.
Wow. Yeah. I appreciate it, man.
So it was pretty awesome.
I had a great freaking time. And there's a good couple of times, I think, today, man. You were that last one with James. Literally, there was a point I sent it. I sent it in the private chat where I was just like, shit, put Scott on the one up. He's cooking right now. Like, let the motherfucker go. So
I try to earn my keep, you know.
You do great stuff. You do great. And even though Sophia we didn't have her on today. I don't know if you guys have seen her, but man, she has some damn good responses to stuff. So you're gonna have to go watch that. But
for sure,
in the meantime, we are gonna fuck off, and we're gonna be in the Discord for a little bit for the after show. I don't know how long, but it'll be a little bit. So come hang out with us if you got the time. Until then, we will be back here next week, 4:30 p.m. Central Time, and I'll shut the fuck up so we can all go home. So thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you next time. Crew has already started sending very nasty messages. Never seen the word with a U like that, but they're using it a lot.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.